All right, folks. Hey, welcome back to the program. We've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. And this is happening again all over the state where you have your local governments that are trying to raise taxes on the people. And if you combine that with what's going on at the state level, it's getting onerous, it's getting burdensome and frustrating. The city of Jonesboro has called a special election for September the 10th, where they will be asking for the citizens to vote for 1 cent sales tax. Half of that cent will go to police and fire, we hope. And the other half will go to, assuming if you want the tax to pass, you would hope that it actually goes with the other part of the tax is supposed to go to a luxury tax. We don't really know specifically what that will be. It could be a pool. It could be, renovating a theater. It could be an aquatic center. It could be a museum. Here now to talk more about this is Alderman, City Councilman Bobby Long. Bobby, how are you?
Hey, Paul, doing good.
Okay, so there was a meeting on Monday night, the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party, and you were there, I was there, as well as this organization called Team Jonesboro, which are concerned citizens that have formed this group that are for this tax. And they gave a presentation, a PowerPoint. They had members of the community, or members of Team Jonesboro there from different sectors of the community. They each spoke. Just generally, what did you think of the event generally?
First of all, thanks for having me. And I also want to give kudos to the Tea Party, for bringing them in and having this discussion. I think Iris, was bold in bringing them in. I think Team Jonesboro did exactly what they set out to do. They set out to, make their presentation, make their pitch. They took questions, a lot of comments. My take from the whole night was the frustration that I felt. I think there was a lot of frustration. I think there was a lot of people that were that thought that there was more going on to the whole thing than what meets the eye. I think you could tell that by some of the comments, and some of the questions, that were raised.
Yeah.
So,
do you think some of those? I came away thinking, okay, I do think that, this does appear to be definitely sincere. They believe this is the best idea for it, and I'm really grateful for that aspect of
yes.
it, right? I'm no longer questioning motives. Now we can just debate the policy, if you will.
Yes, and I've said that from the beginning, even from the first time that I presented at the Finance Committee. Before this thing ever went to City Council, it had to go through the Finance Committee. There were 6 people on the Finance Committee. And I made my presentation to them as to why, this had some questions. I had a lot of questions to ask. I also, at one point, I said, if we're going to do this, then let's split the tax. One ordinance for fire and police, the other for amenities. Let people be able to vote for one, both, none, or whatever. And I asked 2 times for a motion that this be sent back and split up. Not only was I said no, but I was ignored.
Yeah.
So even at the first meeting, I said that a lot of these people from Team Jonesboro are my friends. A lot of them I've known for quite some time and have the greatest respect for. And I hope that after this, we'll still be friends. But it doesn't mean we always have to be on the same side of the fence.
Yeah.
And on this particular issue, I'm on the opposite side of the fence. It doesn't mean that I hold any of them in any less regard, and I hope they don't hold me, in any less regard. But we just happen to be on the same side of the fence, and how to actually grow a community, instead of build it. I think that if, from what I hear from all over the place, is that if this was just the fire and police, I could probably get behind it. But it's the other things that they see as problematic because they understand the deficit budget. It looks like Team Jonesboro's approach to getting a hold of the spending issue, that we've got with pulling money out of reserves, is to build a lot of things that the city has to pay for.
Yeah.
And then the people will come and we will get it in the back door by economic development, increased sales tax and things like that. But if you see that never works.
It's essentially, I mean, if you really think, if you boil down their logic, it's essentially a stimulus.
It is.
Plan.
It's a big stimulus plan.
That's the it's a Keynesian idea if you boil it down to it. Now there's also the safety aspect and everything else. I thought it was interesting that there was, I feel like some transparency in that, hey, we need this tax because, of a crime problem, as well as maybe a real estate problem. Real estate problem in this case would have been defined as, there's too many low rent properties that are springing up. I thought, what was your response to that? What do you think about that? Because that didn't seem to go over well with some people.
Well, I think their concept was, what's happening is we're trying to make Jonesboro more expensive in order to keep people that we don't like out. However, I've always been a proponent, for 3 years on the city council, one of the main things that I ran on was that I will protect the value of your single family home. And I still do that, even to this day. I've been a strong opponent of multifamily housing being built, in the proximity of or in the middle of single family residence, and I'll continue to do that. It's not that I'm against single family or against multifamily housing. It's just, when you buy a home, that's one of your single largest investments that you make in your entire life, and you want your neighborhood to be consistent with the same way that when you bought it. And when you start, putting different types in there, then it changes the whole dynamic of where you live and what you bought for the next 40, 50, 60 years.
Correct. It's clearly an issue. I mean, there's no question that they have, that they have that. That it's an issue.
Right, yeah. But to think that the idea of bringing in aquatic centers, water park, let me take that back. Governmental run entities. Yeah. I'm okay with a private industry coming in here, buying our land, employing our people, paying our taxes, and running something for profit. I think that is great. However, when the government gets involved in some of those things that I feel that private industry should be taking a hold of, then that's where I sort of get sideways, with these ideas.
So in the presentation, Team Jonesboro did talk about. They did talk about the city has been pulling into reserves, to pay for what we've got going on now. Like we're not balancing the budget, I guess, if you will. And so, to your point, they want more money from the people, but then they're gonna build new things with it. And so that was, that was like kind of the very first thing. I'm glad they're acknowledging that that's happening. But on the other hand, I will say, I think Team Jonesboro, legitimately, what I got out of it was that they are frustrated with some of the decisions that have been made by the government about how they have spent money in the past. Now, and I would agree with them, but I'm not really sure that rewarding the government for their bad decisions with more of our money is the answer. That's
yeah. They seem to think that the Integrity Council is somehow going to drive all this, but at the end of the day, like I said, at the meeting, that when we vote for this, the minute that we vote yes, or those ordinances for the special election, which I think is a waste of money, I don't think that there's an emergency involved. I think I would have rather seen them go out and stand on the street corner and talk with people eyeball to eyeball, and say, this is what we want. Will you vote to put this on a special election instead of going the route that they did?
Well, so to your point, I have criticized this effort a lot because of the special election, and I think special elections I think there's an ethical problem with them, especially when they're done so that I know they're going to say what they did say in the meeting was, well, this makes sure that our issue is talked about more. But the bottom line is, you can say that, but a study done from 81 to 2018, voter turnout's going to be,
under 20%,
under 20%, versus in a general where it's going to be around 46%.
Right.
And, you're going to get a more accurate opinion of what the people who actually have to pay the tax believe. And that's the bottom line. Now, they did their homework, and they had a retort for that criticism of special election. Team Jonesboro did. They came back and they said in the meeting, well, you guys did a special election to undo what the city council did when they passed the international property maintenance code. But there's a difference there, isn't there? What's the difference?
There is a difference. And I know several people that after that was passed, that there was a group of people that said, this is not right. It's going to do more harm than good. So they wanted to get that overturned. And how they did that was they did do a special election. But there were many, many people that stood in the heat of the summer with a clipboard out there talking to people and telling them what's going on and explaining why they wanted this overturned. And they got that person to sign their name, put their address. Yeah. They're saying that, yes, this needs to be overturned and we want to move forward. I don't know how many thousands of signatures that they got, but they talked to thousands of people, and then they, of course, got the needed signatures and got it on a ballot. And it was overturned by like a 60% margin.
And so that's why, see, that's an example of a special election. Actually, I mean, if you're going to have one, that's the one to have. Whether where it's a direct response, to something that the government did that everybody doesn't like, or it's I would have rather it have been in the general. Obviously, I mean, if I were to have a choice, and I think I still would have failed. It would have failed miserably if it would have been in a general election. But to go out and actually get the signatures is different than, I mean, how many people are on the council?
12.
12 people. 12 people. Like, okay, here, we're going to do this special election, and I mean, they do have a point, but I think it's not apples to apples. It's certainly not apples to apples.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, they didn't do anything that was underhanded. They abided by law. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. So I don't want to make that insinuation either.
Yeah. No, you're right. I just got a problem. I mean, I've been, I being down in Little Rock and seeing the stuff that goes on and what appears to be sometimes is just a formality. You wonder why you even have representative government when there's all these predetermined outcomes and everybody already knows what's going to happen, and so it ends up being kind of like a theatrical experience where people are just playing the part and we're not actually having debates. We're not actually. And I from what I could tell, I got that feeling when I watched some of these city council meetings that we pretty much know the fix is in. And the one question that I didn't ask would have been, they kept saying if we don't get this, we're going to have to, you have to cut services possibly. It's like, well, has there been any study done? Like, if a city had to cut services, shouldn't we at least see that plan first? Like, well, this is what we could cut. Have there been any even studies saying, we could? This is a lot of waste. We don't have to have this, and nobody would really even miss it.
Right, non-essential services until we get the budget under control. I remember it may have been last year. I was asked one recent council meeting from another councilman. Well, how would you balance this budget, because we had just, I think, 6.4 million maybe, 15.6 last year, 6.4 this year out of the reserves to balance the budget. There was, well, what's some of the suggestions you would have? And I remember one council meeting that there was an ordinance to buy 40 acre of what I called a gravel pit behind Craighead Forest, and it sort of helped make the lines even and stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly, what the purpose was, but it's $450,000 for those 40 acres, $450,000. But then later on, we were also told that, we're going to have to do some really hard things in the future if we don't get the spending under control. If we don't find a way to get more revenue into the city, But then 2 ordinances before it was passed, I voted against that, because I was thinking, because that had not been the first time that issue had been brought up, that we're going to have to do some hard things, in order to get this under control. And then we come up with an ordinance to spend money on 40 acres that I really didn't think we needed at that time.
Yeah.
And we sure didn't need to spend $450,000 at that time. So I think that would have been a pretty good start.
Let's talk about the police and fire real quick with the time that we have left. So the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party seemed to think that the police and fire was totally legitimate, and that they would vote for that if it was just that. And I think there are some people that were convinced by this presentation just based on the audience. I think some people were like, okay, all right, we're going to vote for this. Not all, a minority, but I do think some people in the audience were. But there was some discussion about what happened 10 years ago. And I want to set the record straight because I know what happened 10 years ago. They voted for a 50-cent sales tax. It passed. I mean, I was following it, very closely, and it was a shell game. They brought this up in the meeting. It was a shell game last time where people thought they were going to be, saving police jobs. And the fire chief did say, look, this was not to add anything. This was just to maintain. Well, so what happened was that 50 cent went to the police and fire, and what was being spent on police and fire could now then be pulled out and allocated somewhere else. I mean, that's what took place. And so somebody brought that up, meaning, how do we know that's not going to happen again? And the folks at Team Jonesboro seem to think that they would work to get city council members out of office if, in fact, this passes and the police and fire, because we do have this crime uptick, don't actually get more money, don't actually have more money. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think everybody should. I think everybody should. I think when government officials go out and they promote something and they get the people to believe, their point of view, and the people act and respond to that and say, okay, and then they don't do what they say they're going to do, then yes, by all means, get a candidate that will and run that candidate, and support that candidate. I'm all for that. Like I say, I don't think anybody, and from what I've heard, I've not heard one person, that would say, yeah, I don't think we need to do this for police fire. We do need 2 new stations. We do. Our police radios do need to be updated and things like that. One of the questions, though, would be, how have we've known this is coming. It's not sneaking up on us.
That's the thing. We've known this is coming.
We've known it's coming, so it's not. So what's been done, or
where are we spending
our money on?
I mean, that's what's so frustrating, is where are we spending our money? These are sales taxes. The more people that do business, the more money you get. We have record sales tax revenue, and yet they're going to the people and they're saying, we got to have more money. Come on,
we got to have more. Yeah.
Good grief.
They mentioned Paragould. They mentioned Paragould at 9%. We're at 8.5%. But Paragould passed a 1% permanent sales tax that goes directly to Parks and Rec that helps overcome the deficit that their family center out there in their water park has every month.
Yeah.
I've not seen one. Matter of fact, I talked to a lady that worked for legislative audit for 30 years. She said that she can't remember in all of her years going all over Arkansas that she saw one of those things actually make money. So what's actually happening is they're asking us for this 1%, half a cent from entities. Then what's going to happen, we're going to have to pay to get in. Then the city is going to have to come up and find a way to make money out of an already strained budget to compensate for what we know is probably going to be losses. Statistically, there will be losses. It will not make money. And then in 12 years, somehow everything is just going to even out, and we're going to have enough money to sustain not one, but possibly 10 drains, on the city. And I just don't see that happening. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Bobby Long, it's always great to talk to you, sir. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Paul.
And just so you know, I reached out to Team Jonesboro after that meeting, got some contact, and again, I appreciate them coming and having what was a civil, congenial debate most of the time. I think the entire time it was, but there was some there were a few times I was just like, I hope hope this doesn't,
Blow up.
Yeah, blow up. Please don't do this. I don't like public confrontation.
Yeah.
It's easier just to talk there. It's anonymously, kind of anonymously on the microphone. But
it's good, and I hope that we can continue to have these types of discussions.
And I reached out to them to come on the show. Is what I'm saying.
Sure.
So I don't know if they will, but I told them I'd love to, have them on. We could talk to.
Well, I hope they do.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's always great to have you, Bob. Appreciate
Thanks, Paul.
it, folks.